Exhibiting artist Ryan Murphy is the head research assistant and STEAM fellow in the Office of Government Relations at the Rhode Island School of Design. Ryan is studying industrial design at RISD with a broader interest in the role of design in international public policy, development, and entrepreneurship. Today, Ryan will address STEM plus art equals STEAM.
Thank you. So yes, hello, I'm Ryan Murphy. Today I will be speaking about adding an A into what we have been referring to all night as the STEM disciplines. So whenever I come home from school and someone asks, oh, what are you studying? What do you do in school? And I say, oh, well, I go to this art and design college up in Providence. They're kind of like, arts? Why would you do arts? Can't you see that our president is advocating for science, tech, engineering, and math? How do the arts, how does design fit into that whole scheme? Well, if we step back and we take a broader look at some of the industry corporations, some education sectors that are really pushing forward the STEM disciplines, they're doing it in very interesting and innovative ways. And very often, as you can obviously see with Apple, it's through art and design. So not just here with Apple and the iPod Nano being a variety of different colors, Apple's design approach to how their end users looked at their products is why we see their iPods all over the place and not regular MP3 players. Moving on to a different colorful set of friends, Sesame Street, and the way that they have always put forward their learning programs has been through music, has been through arts, and has been through these radical ways of reimagining how we present information to our young children. But on a much, much bigger scale, we can look to an organization like Boeing. Boeing employs 200,000 people. They have $17 billion a year in gross revenue. And their CEO is saying that innovation is spurred by the arts. So if you're in Illinois, if you're in Chicago, and you want to put money into really your industry, then adding the arts is a huge, huge thing. But this goes back many years. George Antheil and Hedy Lamarr, a composer and an actress, were the first people who invented frequency hopping. And most modern-day cell phones are built in encryption upon those same principles, all through essentially creative artists. Another great example is Jacquard and the programmable loom. Punch cards were originally developed by an artist to look at how he could more efficiently establish weaving techniques. And these punch cards were the basis for kind of all modern-day computer programming nowadays. And moving to even older arts, paintings have always been very kind of intertwined with scientific discussion. But what's really interesting here for us now is not that this artist chooses to depict a scientific experiment, but rather the method that he is using in this painting. So this is light and dark, something in the Renaissance and Baroque era was called Chiaroscuro, which in a different way is picked up in Fauves paintings with exaggeration of color. And so these two approaches, chiaroscuro, the light and dark, and exaggerated color, are being used frequently now by NSA and NASA in how they're presenting visual information based on satellite data. So they're pulling from these artistic traditions in their scientific work. And this fascinating study by MacArthur Fellow Robert Root Bernstein at Michigan State discovered that Nobel laureates in the sciences were 25 times as likely to engage in singing, dance, art. So how do we get there? Well, from RISD, from the artistic side, we go to the Edna Lawrence Nature Lab. This is a site on campus that has hundreds of taxidermy objects. We go from an artistic perspective and learn from the sciences. So rooted in these experiences and this kind of tradition and these natural forms can build upon how we're designing and creating artistic works, how we're questioning. So this was a studio run funded by F-SCORE looking at oysters, and it was working with Brown University and URI to study how we can better communicate scientific information like Samantha talked about earlier. And so RISD alumni are also pulling heavily from this overlap between art and science. Rebecca Kaman, a very fascinating alum, is working with neuroscientists and working with funding from the NIH to go over to Madrid and build essentially sculptures, which you can see behind her, which are all based on the human retina. So there's some fascinating kind of connections and overlaps in these areas. So as you heard Samantha talk about earlier, RISD is starting to really get a lot of footing into how designers can break out of this fold and how we can start to have an effect on policy. And so I also had the great fortune to receive one of the Maharam STEAM Fellowships this past summer, where I was blessed to work with the World Economic Forum. And so I was the only designer working with a variety of policy, economics people, consultants, and looking at how we can better communicate essentially big data policy moving forward from a collection to use-based model. So where is this now? Well, it all ultimately starts here in Capitol Hill. This is a photo from last February where Suzanne Bonamici from Oregon and Aaron Schock led a bipartisan STEAM caucus, which now has over 50 representatives on it, to look at how we can better incorporate the arts into the webbing of the STEM disciplines. Nancy Pelosi just came to RISD about 2 months ago to work with David Cicilline and Jim Langevin in looking at how critical making that RISD is so kind of thoroughly upholding now can influence economic development and manufacturing in Rhode Island. So there's a variety of ways, as you can see, that the arts are starting to really break into these fields, especially in the policy domain. This is a colloquium held last month at RISD, which brought in a variety of teachers, both from the arts as well as from other disciplines, to reimagine, in that same kind of Sesame Street way, how we're thinking about educating students, and if cutting funding for the arts is the best way to spur both artistic as well as STEM disciplines. So as we've seen a lot this evening, 2 circles, you have the overlap in the middle, and that's really where the magic's happen. And I think kind of as the final speaker, as the kind of the one thing I would say to take away is that the 2 different communities here, bringing them together for that overlap is what I think is so powerful. And going to RISD, being an artist, you know, people say, you know, your dad's a biochemist, your mom's a lawyer, how did you get to this point? Ultimately, as my dad likes to say, there's not that much difference between what he's looking at a molecular level and what I'm looking at in industrial design on a 3D level. So more creative scientists, more scientific artists, I think there's an incredible collaboration that can happen, and I think it's evidence of that for the people here tonight. Thank you.